When a woman realizes you're no longer interested, her world shifts. At first, shock and ego hit hard. Then comes curiosity, testing, and fear of replacement. Ironically, your silence awakens her respect and rekindles desire. True power lies in indifference. When you no longer chase, she finally values your presence. When a woman realizes you're no longer interested, the very first wave that hits her is shock. It's not just about you pulling away. It's about the disruption of her belief that she held a certain power over your emotions. She was used to being the center of your attention, the recipient of your energy, the one you would respond to instantly, no matter what. Suddenly, that cycle is broken. The calls aren't returned the same way. The eagerness in your voice has faded, and your focus no longer revolves around her. That moment catches her off guard because she didn't expect it. Most women unconsciously assume that once a man invests his heart and energy, he will continue to stay locked in that rhythm, regardless of how she behaves. So when she sees indifference, it shakes the foundation of what she thought was secure. The ego plays a massive role here. You see, attention is not just affection, it's validation. Every good morning text, every compliment, every effort you put in fed her sense of worth in the relationship. When that fuel is withdrawn, she doesn't just miss you. She feels a void in her ego. That absence screams louder than your presence ever did. She starts to question, how could he stop? Why doesn't he want me anymore? What changed? And in those questions, her pride is deeply wounded because to her, indifference is not neutral. It feels like rejection. At first, she might try to brush it off with confidence, acting like it doesn't bother her. But internally, she feels a sting she cannot ignore. Shock is not simply emotional, it's psychological. She thought she had control of the narrative, that she could decide when to give or withhold affection. But the moment you stop caring, the control slips from her hands. And that's the true ego hit. It's the realization that she wasn't as irreplaceable as she believed. This is why many women, when faced with your detachment, will respond with subtle tests. They might try to spark conversations, suddenly compliment you, or even create scenarios to get your attention. It isn't always about love. It's about recovering that lost validation. The ego cannot stand the idea of being overlooked, especially by someone who once made her feel significant. Shock then becomes a restless search for reassurance. Your silence, your calm, and your lack of pursuit all echo louder than words. It unsettles her because she expects resistance. She expects you to argue, to chase, to fight for her presence. When you don't, the shock intensifies. And this is the very moment that flips the power dynamic, because she realizes, perhaps for the first time, that your attention was never guaranteed. It was a choice. And the fact that you've chosen to withdraw it hits her ego harder than anything you could say. When the initial shock of your detachment settles, her mind cannot rest. Curiosity begins to creep in, and it's not the harmless kind. It's the type that grows stronger with every unanswered question. She wants to know why you changed, why the energy she once owned is no longer directed toward her. That curiosity doesn't stay passive. It quickly transforms into obsession. She replays old conversations, studies your actions, and even looks for patterns in your silence. Every small detail suddenly becomes significant in her eyes. If you reply later than usual, she analyzes it. If you don't comment on something you would have before, she feels it. Her mind becomes a detective, searching for clues in every gap you leave. What makes this obsession so intense is that it comes from a place of uncertainty. Human nature despises not knowing. And when it comes to relationships, women especially struggle with unanswered whys. If she was used to your consistency, your withdrawal feels like a puzzle she must solve. The mind naturally hates unfinished stories, and so she becomes restless, turning her curiosity into a mission to uncover the hidden reason behind your indifference. This is where her emotions begin to betray her. She might convince herself that she doesn't care, that she's moved on, but her actions reveal otherwise. She'll check your social media more often than before, not just to see what you're doing, but to find out who you're giving your energy to now. If she suspects another woman, the obsession deepens because it no longer feels like she just lost your attention. It feels like someone else replaced her. The thought of being replaced fuels her mind with endless what ifs, and suddenly your silence has her thinking about you more than she ever did when you were giving her attention freely. Ironically, the very things she overlooked or even criticized in you before now become magnified. She starts to wonder if she underestimated your value, if she failed to see the strength in your ability to walk away emotionally. Obsession doesn't come from love alone. It comes from realizing she may have lost something she thought was permanent. And because she didn't see it coming, she cannot easily let it go. This obsession also changes her behavior in subtle ways. She may initiate contact more often, trying to draw you out, or she might create situations where you're forced to respond. At times, she could even act colder toward you just to see if you'll react, all while monitoring closely whether her actions trigger any shift in you. What's happening underneath all this is simple. Her curiosity is no longer about you alone. It's about her own worth. She's desperate to know whether she still holds power in your world, and your detachment becomes the mirror reflecting the answer back at her. Once curiosity begins to consume her, it doesn't stay quiet inside. It transforms into emotional turmoil, a storm that she cannot easily control. On the surface, she may appear calm, even indifferent, but internally she is battling conflicting emotions. Confusion, insecurity, anger, and longing all swirl within her, and the weight of those feelings begins to press down on her heart. The reason it hits so deeply is because her sense of control has been shaken. She is used to being the one who dictates the flow of attention, but now that you've pulled away, she is stuck between wanting to regain that control and not knowing how to. Confusion often hits first. She asks herself countless questions. Did I do something wrong? Did he lose interest because of me? Was I not enough? These thoughts loop endlessly, robbing her of peace. Insecurity follows right after. The absence of your attention doesn't just feel like silence, it feels like rejection, and rejection cuts deeply into her self-worth. She may start comparing herself to other women, wondering if someone else has taken her place, or if she has somehow failed to hold your interest. This comparison adds fuel to the emotional chaos she is already experiencing. Anger then enters the mix. She may not show it openly, but deep down she feels resentment. How dare he ignore me? How dare he stop caring after everything? This anger is not just about you. It's about her ego being bruised. The thought that she no longer has a hold over you becomes unbearable, yet at the same time, she cannot detach from the longing she feels. This is where turmoil intensifies, because she simultaneously resents your distance and craves your attention. Those two emotions pulling in opposite directions create an internal battlefield. At times, this emotional storm leaks into her behavior. She may lash out, act distant, or use passive-aggressive remarks, hoping to provoke a reaction. Or she might suddenly try to act overly sweet, attempting to pull you back in with kindness. Either way, her actions are not balanced. They are driven by the chaos she feels inside. She doesn't know if she wants to punish you for withdrawing or win you back. That indecision keeps her locked in a restless state where no action truly gives her peace. The irony is your indifference speaks louder than any words. It magnifies her emotional struggle because the calmer you remain, the more unstable she feels. What once gave her comfort, your predictable attention, has been replaced with uncertainty. That shift shakes her identity in the relationship, leaving her torn between pride and vulnerability. She wants to maintain her dignity, but the emotional pull drags her back into caring about the very thing she swore she wouldn't. And that is the essence of turmoil. It's not one emotion, but a collision of many, leaving her unsettled and restless. When the storm of emotions becomes too heavy to keep inside, she doesn't just sit with it. She begins to test you. These tests are not random. They are her way of measuring whether she still holds influence over you, whether she can still pull you back into her orbit. At this point, she's not searching for clarity, she's searching for control. And when she feels that control slipping, the only way she knows how to regain it is by pushing buttons to see how you respond. One of the first tests she may use is distance. She might suddenly go cold, act like she doesn't care, or even ignore you altogether. But this isn't real detachment, it's bait. She wants to see if your old patterns resurface, if you'll chase after her like you once did. If you panic, if you reach out in desperation, she instantly knows she still has your attention. But if you remain unshaken, the test backfires, leaving her even more unsettled. Another way she tests you is through subtle provocation. She may bring up other men in conversation, casually mentioning someone who gave her attention, or she might showcase her social life more openly than before. This isn't always about genuine interest in others. It's about triggering a reaction from you. She wants to know, do you still get jealous? Do you still care enough to fight for her? If you don't react, if your energy remains steady, the silence cuts deeper than words ever could. Some tests come in the form of affection. She may suddenly shower you with kindness, compliments, or physical closeness, almost as if nothing ever changed. But even this isn't always authentic. It's a probe. She wants to see if your walls will fall, if you'll surrender your detachment and rush back into the same rhythm of devotion she was used to. If you do, she regains her sense of control. If you don't, it confuses her even more, forcing her to reevaluate her grip on your attention. These tests aren't always obvious. Sometimes they appear as small requests, asking for your help with something she could do herself, or seeking your opinion on things just to see how much weight your words still carry. Each interaction is measured carefully in her mind. If you respond too eagerly, she feels reassured that her influence still lingers. But if your energy stays calm, detached, and consistent, she starts to realize that her methods no longer work. What's really happening underneath these tests is fear. Fear that she has lost the ability to affect you. Fear that your attention has shifted elsewhere. Fear that you've discovered your own strength without her. And so she throws out signals, waiting to see if you bite. These moments reveal her deepest insecurity, that she was never the one in control, that the real power was always in your willingness to give. When all her efforts to test you don't bring the response she expected, something shifts inside her, something she may not even admit to herself at first. Respect begins to awaken. It's a quiet realization, but it grows stronger with each moment she sees you standing firm in your detachment. For the first time, she sees that you are not a man who can be swayed easily by emotion, manipulation, or temporary gestures. And that realization forces her to look at you differently. Respect doesn't come from what you give endlessly. It comes from what you refuse to tolerate. When you were chasing, when you were always available, she may have enjoyed it, but she didn't value it the same way. Consistent attention can feel comforting, but it can also feel ordinary. Once you take that attention away, she notices the strength it requires to detach, to remain unmoved, to not seek validation from her reactions. That strength is what stirs respect within her. She begins to reflect on her own behavior, questioning whether she misjudged you. All those times she assumed you would never pull away, all those moments she thought she had your loyalty no matter how she acted. Now they stand in contrast to the man who chose himself over her approval. That contrast forces her to reevaluate who you are. And the truth is, women respect men who can walk away from what doesn't serve them because it shows backbone, self-worth, and independence. The respect she feels isn't just about you ignoring her. It's about the way you carry that indifference. If your distance comes with bitterness, anger, or spite, she sees weakness. But when your detachment comes with calmness and composure, she sees discipline. And discipline commands respect. It shows her that you're not controlled by your impulses or by the fear of losing her. You are led by a deeper understanding of your own value, and that realization shifts the balance in her mind. Ironically, the very things she may have criticized before now appear differently. Your independence, once overlooked, becomes attractive. Your silence, once frustrating, now feels powerful. Your focus on yourself, once mistaken for neglect, now seems like strength. This awakening of respect is subtle, but it reshapes her perception of you. She may not openly admit it, but inside she begins to see you as the man she underestimated, the man she cannot easily replace, the man who stands tall even when she tries to shake him. This respect also brings with it a new kind of attraction. A woman cannot genuinely admire someone she does not respect. And when respect awakens, so does the desire to reconnect with the strength she now recognizes in you. Your ability to remain detached without losing composure creates a new dynamic, one where she is no longer the only one with influence. For perhaps the first time, she sees you as the man she should never have taken lightly. Once respect begins to surface, another powerful feeling soon follows: fear. Not just fear of losing you, but fear of being replaced. A woman who once felt secure in your attention suddenly realizes that her position is no longer guaranteed. The thought that another woman could now be experiencing the energy, presence, and care that she once received shakes her deeply. This fear is not always expressed openly, but it lingers in her actions, in her words, and most importantly, in her silence. The fear of replacement comes from one simple truth: your attention is valuable. When she had it freely, she may have taken it for granted, but now that it's gone, she knows what it feels like to miss it. And if you are no longer interested, her mind doesn't just imagine you alone, it imagines you with someone else. The vision of another woman being on the receiving end of your time, your loyalty and your affection stirs jealousy like nothing else. That jealousy is often less about love and more about possession. She fears not just losing you, but losing the privilege of being the one who mattered most to you. This fear creates restlessness. She begins to scan for signs, wondering if you're texting someone else, watching closely if you've changed your habits, or even subtly asking questions to gauge where your energy is going. Even if she never says it outright, the unease shows in her behavior. She may suddenly become more protective, more interested in what you're doing, or more eager to insert herself into your life again. The possibility of being replaced pushes her to act in ways she once didn't feel the need to. The most unsettling part for her is the uncertainty. If she doesn't know where your energy is going, her imagination fills in the blanks, and imagination is often harsher than reality. She pictures you happy without her, fulfilled by someone else, giving another woman the very things she once overlooked. That image cuts deeply because it means she is no longer the only one who has access to your attention. And for many women, that's the ultimate fear. Not just losing a man, but watching him elevate another woman to the place she thought was hers alone. What intensifies this fear is your calmness. If you seem unbothered, if you continue moving forward without showing any signs of longing or regret, it signals to her that you're not just detached. You may already be building a life beyond her. That realization doesn't just sting, it terrifies her. Because if you truly have shifted your focus, it means she is no longer central in your world, and someone else could be stepping into that role. This fear can drive her back toward you, even if she doesn't fully understand why. It's not always love that brings her closer. It's the dread of being replaced. And in that dread, she begins to value what she once dismissed, realizing that indifference is not just about you letting go. It's about you being free to choose someone else. When a woman realizes you're no longer interested, one of the most profound changes she feels is the shift in power dynamics. In the beginning, she may have held the upper hand without even realizing it. Your constant attention, your eagerness to respond, and your willingness to prioritize her created a rhythm where she unconsciously felt in control. She knew she could rely on your presence, that no matter what she did, you would remain available. But when that presence fades, the dynamic reverses, and the power she once assumed she had begins to dissolve. This shift is not always dramatic on the outside, but internally it's undeniable. The more indifferent you become, the more she recognizes that her influence over you isn't as strong as she thought. It's a jarring realization because so much of her confidence in the relationship was tied to the belief that she had emotional leverage. When she no longer sees you reacting, no longer sees you chasing, no longer sees you hanging on to her words, she has to confront the truth. The balance has changed and you are no longer the one seeking approval. For a woman, this shift is unsettling because it alters the foundation of how she interacted with you. When she was the one in control, she could take her time, test boundaries, and even pull away, knowing you would close the distance. Now, however, the tables have turned. Suddenly, she is the one wondering where she stands. She is the one left uncertain, and she is the one trying to measure your level of interest. The dependency she once assumed was yours is now creeping into her own emotions. What makes this change so powerful is the way it forces her to respect your independence. A man who no longer revolves around her is a man she cannot predict, and unpredictability naturally commands attention. The moment she realizes you no longer need her validation, she begins to question her own role in your life. And that questioning puts her in a position she once had you in, the position of seeking reassurance. This reversal doesn't always make her admit it out loud, but her actions begin to show it. She may try harder to capture your attention, dress differently when she knows you'll be around, or engage you in conversations she wouldn't normally initiate. Each attempt is her way of regaining some of the power she feels slipping away. But the irony is, the more effort she puts in to pull you back, the clearer it becomes that the control she once had is no longer absolute. The shift in power dynamics is not about dominance or control, it's about freedom. When you no longer cling to her, you free yourself from her influence, and that freedom makes her see you through a new lens. What she once saw as predictable is now intriguing. What she once felt certain of is now uncertain. And in that uncertainty, she begins to realize that the power was never truly hers. It was always yours to give, and the moment you took it back, the dynamic of everything changed. When indifference becomes consistent, when your silence is no longer temporary but a steady presence, something unexpected begins to happen. Her desire reignites. This isn't the same desire she once felt in the beginning. It's sharper, more urgent, because it comes from lack. What was once abundant is now scarce, and scarcity creates value. Your energy, your presence, your attention, things she once believed would always be available, suddenly feel rare. And in that rarity, attraction is reborn. She may not even understand why she feels it. At first, she might resist it, convincing herself she doesn't care. But the human heart is drawn to what it cannot fully possess. When you were eager, when you constantly pursued, she knew she had you. That certainty gave her comfort, but also dulled her excitement. Now, with you no longer chasing, with you no longer hanging on her every move, she feels that spark again. She wonders, what changed in him? Why does he no longer need me the way he used to? That curiosity fuels attraction because mystery is one of the strongest triggers of desire. The absence of your validation also stirs something primal in her. Women are wired to admire strength, and the ability to detach without bitterness is strength in its purest form. She begins to see you through a new lens, not as the man who gave endlessly, but as the man who knows his worth and refuses to be controlled by emotions. That shift doesn't just awaken respect, it awakens longing. She wants to feel chosen again, to experience the rush of being pursued, but now from a man who has proven he doesn't need her to feel complete. This rekindled desire often shows in her behavior. She might start initiating conversations more often, reaching out with little excuses to reconnect. She may reminisce about old memories, trying to remind you of the bond you once shared. At times, she may even compete for your attention, especially if she suspects someone else has it. These actions are not random. They're attempts to draw you back into her world because the fire she once let burn out is now sparking again. The irony is powerful. The very indifference she may have once accused you of, the very calmness that frustrated her, is now what pulls her closer. Because desire doesn't grow in certainty, it grows in uncertainty. And when she realizes that she no longer has complete access to your emotions, the chase flips. You are no longer the one seeking, she is. Your absence becomes the magnet, your silence becomes the mystery, and your composure becomes the force she cannot ignore. This rekindling of desire is not always about love. It's about the human tendency to crave what cannot be controlled. And when she feels that she can't fully own your attention anymore, she wants it more than ever. What she once overlooked now feels precious, and the man she thought she understood now feels like the very challenge her heart wants to win back. And so when a woman realizes you're no longer interested, her journey takes her through shock, curiosity, emotional turmoil, endless tests, the awakening of respect, the fear of being replaced, the shift in power dynamics, and finally, the rekindling of desire. Every stage is a mirror reflecting not just her reaction, but the strength of your detachment. What she once believed was guaranteed, she learns was always a choice. What she once assumed she controlled, she sees, was never truly in her hands. The greatest lesson here is simple yet powerful. Your value is not proven by how hard you chase, but by how calmly you can walk away. When you are no longer dependent on her validation, you reveal the kind of strength that commands respect, awakens attraction, and restores balance. Indifference is not weakness, it is power. And when you master that power, you no longer beg to be chosen. Instead, you become the one who chooses.